Good afternoon. My name is Leila Holt, and my thesis is on how prenuptial agreements violate the pureness of holy commitment. Firm foundations refer to a physical structure that is built so securely that it stands to adverse conditions. The structure cannot be easily shaken under pressure because of its foundational strength. The Bible clearly explains this truth in the case of marriage. In the very beginning of the Bible, Genesis 2:24 states, "A man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." The oneness of the flesh will not crumble in times of affliction. In Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, he warns his listeners about the consequences of neglecting strong foundations when he says that everyone who then hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. However, Jesus encourages his listeners when he says that everyone who then hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And when the marital rain and floods came, and the winds blew against the foundation, it did not fall, because it had been founded on the firm foundation of the Bible. Let's go back in time to a familiar fairy tale. Once upon a time, there was a mother pig and her 3 piglets. As the piglets grew, Mother Pig could no longer provide food for them, so as a result, she sent them off into the world. These 3 pigs had quite different personalities revealed in the way each one began to build their dwellings. The first pig built his home with straw, since he was very lazy and sought a quick answer. The second pig built his home with stick, because he wanted to spend his free time frolicking and playing with his friends. Finally, the hard-working pig built his home with brick, stacked with a fireplace and a chimney. His house could withstand any wind that blew against it. Then one day, a wolf passed near the pig's lane, and he was starving and ready to eat. He went to the first pig's house, built of straw, and blew the house down. The first pig escaped and ran to the second pig's house to hide. As the wolf continued searching, he went to the second pig's house, built of stick, and blew the house down as well. He was drooling at this point and suffering with ravenous thoughts. The 2 pigs scrambled their hooves over to the last pig's house, built carefully with brick and strong effort. When the wolf arrived, he huffed and puffed, and huffed and puffed, and huffed and puffed, but was tiredly unsuccessful in blowing the house down. The story concludes as the pigs boiled and ate the wolf. The moral of the story, and a lesson throughout all of life, is that anything worthwhile must have a strong, stable, and promising foundation. Of course, this is the case in marriage. The troubles of marriage may be symbolic in that in the big bad wolf, and husbands and wives may feel like the pressures and difficulties of marriage can blow their house down. When marriage, an institution that God himself designed as a holy union, begins with prenuptial agreements, couples are choosing a foundation that is man-made. But with the covenant marriage, couples can find the firm foundation that God wants for all of his people. For the sake of understanding, a prenuptial agreement, also shortened to prenup, is a legally binding contract signed by a couple before marriage, specifying how their assets, debts, spousal support will be handled in the event of divorce or death. However, a covenant marriage is a legally distinct kind of marriage in which the marrying couple agrees to obtain premarital counseling and accept more limited grounds for divorce. According to Dave Ramsey, author of The Total Money Makeover, a covenant marriage is something that should be praised between a married man and a woman. It can create harmony, long-lasting benefits, and a high relationship quality. As society normalizes prenuptial agreements, covenant marriages are on the decline. This is the picture of what a traditional marriage should look like. In May of 1999, a godly man and a godly woman tied the knot. They both believed the covenant marriage was the ideal move, for signing this contract allows strict additional steps to legally divorce. This contract is only approved in 3 states, Alabama, Arkansas, and Louisiana. Part of this contract means a series of premarital counseling. They signed this bond, and now, being a covenant couple, the only way they could exit out of this union was according to the 3 A's: abuse, addiction, and abandonment. This couple is none other than Mike and Kelly Johnson. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and his wife Miss Johnson are from our very own town and are the poster couple for covenant marriage, according to NOLA.com. Kelly wanted to be sure that whoever she married would be committed to her for a lifetime. She makes clear that it is a big red flag for a woman to decide she wants a covenant marriage, and her mate says, "No, I don't want to do that." Mike Johnson states that we are established as one nation under God, and we desperately need to return to this fundamental understanding. He anchors his faith upon his works and prioritizes conservative Christian measures upon his marriage. The Johnsons are a true example of a genuine couple who applied the original biblical basis of the traditional marriage under God's design. Founder of Ramsey Solutions and financial expert Dave Ramsey emphasizes it best, that if prenuptial agreements are taking place, then there is no trust in a relationship. It is certain that society encourages prenuptial agreements to protect a spouse in the event of a divorce. However, considering a divorce prior to marriage is disregarding marriage till death do us part. Prenuptial agreements violate the pureness of holy commitment and take away from God's law. When you become husband and wife, you are a team. Conventionally, in the traditional Christian worldview, the partners should be equally yoked so that the relationship is filled with righteousness, trust, and stability. Having assured reliance on the character and truth of something, trust is key to an everlasting bond. Trust constructs and assembles a healthy relationship. Do you trust your partner or not? Ramsey says. How can a relationship thrive if the two significant others do not have confidence in each other? Of course, there'd be an opportunity for a quick divorce. Trust is imperative for couples because it creates a strong foundation and simply implies a safe and secure bond between the two. Examples of trust in a Christian marriage include faithfulness, integrity, and steadfastness. These characteristics stem from the verse that says, "Husbands and wives are to submit to one another out of reverence for Christ." Although every couple is different, Dave Ramsey's marriage is so great because he and his wife prioritize their marriage. To grow continuously, they spiritually work on their marriage by attending Sunday school once a week that concretely walks through a course on marriage. They also take part in marriage retreat weekends, read about marriage, and often meet with a Christian counselor to discuss how to walk by faith in their marriage. The Ramseys focus on each other even now, as an older, well-established couple in their 60s. The Bible states that when two people marry, they become a part of each other. The two who choose to marry become one entity. The Bible clearly reiterates in multiple instances that wedded couples are expected to harmonize as one flesh when the union begins. A couple who is truly one will be one in all areas of their marriage, and this is typically settled prior to entering into marriage, according to Got Questions Ministries. Ramsey says, if you're married, agree on the budget with your spouse. If you aren't working together, it is almost impossible to win. Ramsey conveyed it brilliantly when he said, I've heard from couples who keep separate bank accounts just in case their spouse leaves them. Well, why on earth would you marry someone you can't trust? It is beneficial to combine bank accounts so that you can share your earnings and grow together. It transforms to a competitive atmosphere when the two accounts are not shared, leaving doubt regarding shared goals. Consider this. Who will pay for the mortgage this month? What is a fair way to split bills? Who is paying for this child's education and their necessities? And so on. As Sheldon Cooper from the hit sitcom Young Sheldon once observed, they are fighting about money. It is a common argument between marriages. Although Sheldon Cooper is just a character in a television series, the sitcom is based on the modern-age family that grapples with marital strife and religious controversy. The writers, Chuck Lorre and Stephen Malero, display the nuclear average family in the U.S. This show highlights financial issues that millions of couples face, with money-related arguments developing daily. With over 30 years of financial experience, wealth advisor Jen Agrippa Martinez notes that most couples hate to talk about money and will delay discussing their finances, since it is projected to lead to debt and financial surprises. The Cooper family deals with numerous monetary shocks like tornado damages, getting laid off from work, and an unexpected pregnancy. Despite the series being centered on a child prodigy, another important aspect is how the family portrays the typical middle-class family, as though money controls their life decisions. With a PhD in marketing, Jenny Olson clarifies that, with separate accounts, it is easier to leave the relationship in a marriage. This is a true statement, because then the couple would not have to carry through a long and difficult process to find the best way to split everything they own together. This is a reasonable affirmation that the spouse can walk out in the marriage at any given time. Jenny Olson and her colleagues created a study to prove this idea. 230 couples, either engaged or newly wedded, were gathered together and split into 3 groups. Before dividing, everyone started with separate bank accounts. However, after the division, the first group was selected to keep separate accounts, but a second group opened joint bank accounts. A third group was then created, and they were allowed to choose which side to join. While the survey lasted 2 years, Olson concluded that the couples who were told to open joint bank accounts reported substantially higher relationship quality than those who maintained separate accounts. It is proven that prenuptial agreements increase rather than decrease the likelihood of divorce by requiring couples to consider explicitly the terms of a divorce settlement. It is as though the couple walks the steps of a divorce before saying, "I do." The author Helmut Rayner notes that while signing a prenuptial agreement, the partners are creating a high expectation, or a negative signal, before the marriage even begins. Rayner realizes a growing percentage difference between a first and second marriage when signing a trust contract. Comparing the two types of marriage, there is a 15% higher chance for couples to sign a prenuptial agreement when going into a second formal relationship. Today, the percentage now exceeds 45%. According to the Harris poll, millennials who have been engaged and are already married have sought a prenuptial agreement. For the Gen Z interviewees, the poll says that 41% entered into a prenup. Regarding a future successful marriage, Rayner proceeds to debate that both parties are required to make investments in their marital assets and relationship so that the relationship will thrive. Morally, it is biblical to not sign a prenuptial agreement since it produces too much uncertainty within the relationship. God intended for a marriage to be permanent. When two Christian people come together, it should be with the strong belief that divorce is not an option. Subsequently, they write that to have a prenuptial agreement allows for the possibility of divorce. In reality, prenuptial agreements make it so much easier to divide a marriage. Exiting a relationship when a prenuptial agreement is pre-existing accelerates the divorce proceedings. This should not be acceptable for a Christian marriage. Christianity teaches that marriage is a covenant. A commitment should not be easily broken. Furthermore, a prenup can also cause the couple not to want to try to resolve the minor bumps in the road. In 1 Corinthians 13, Paul presents love as a gift. This chapter proves that there is no need for a prenuptial agreement. It states that love is patient, kind, comfortable, and rejoices in the truth. Love is confident and endures through every circumstance. Prenuptial agreements promote a selfish motto instead of a selfless biblical model. We as Christians are to follow God's example, like Christ does for the church. God intended for a husband-wife relationship when he assembled Eve from Adam's ribs in Genesis. This moment shared between the first man and woman is when the two became one flesh. Prenuptial agreements initiate too much division and uncertainty, often leading to the very outcome they are meant to intercept: divorce. Although covenant marriages are long-standing and have been the traditional means to the utmost union between a man and a woman, no one can deny that divorces are going to be more and more common. In fact, 50% of marriages end in divorce, and that number continues to rise. This percentage is merely a representation of reality, and is why engaged couples consider taking this route. Therefore, it is no wonder that prenuptial agreements are on the rise. Statistically, there's a 50% chance that they will divorce their spouse. According to Arlen Dubin, author of Prenups for Lovers, A Romantic Guide to Prenuptial Agreement, prenuptial agreements have benefits that to some are worth acknowledging and considering before saying, "I do." Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen had a swift divorce due to their prenuptial agreement. Having played in the NFL for 23 years and victory in 7 Super Bowls, Tom Brady is worth well over $300 million. With a salary of around $400 million, Brazilian fashion model Gisele Bündchen is one of the highest paid models in the world. Both independently worth hundreds of millions of dollars, the couple designed an ironclad, or unbreakable, prenuptial agreement prior to their marriage. This allowed their divorce to run smoother and without complications. Signing the agreement gave them benefits to their future lives and removed any questions of how their assets would be divided in the divorce. Tom and Gisele's divorce is a highly used campaign for prenuptial agreements. Arigas Ma LLP says that you should make prenuptial agreements regardless of your current financial status, for it is impossible to predict what kind of wealth one may amass in the future. Another reason Tom and Gisele's divorce is a highly used campaign for prenuptial agreements is due to the privacy surrounding their breakup. It was handled strategically and purposely, and out of the courtroom, Forbes writes, a model for how any couple can work together to achieve similar results. Those who advocate for the use of prenuptial agreements argue that the agreements give a feeling of certainty as a relationship progresses. However, a question arises based on this assumption. If prenuptial agreements give a sense of stability, does that mean that there is doubt without the prenuptial agreement? If so, then a question arises based on this assumption that almost ensures divorce is inevitable. Hundreds of couples and non-couples repeatedly argue that there is no doubt given in a relationship when involving prenups. But how can this be the case when it asserts solidity? The assurance is that if there is a divorce, then the worry of losing half of everything owned is pushed aside. So the atmosphere of uncertainty is already there from the onset of the marriage. Someone might ask, drafting a prenup is not saying we doubt our love. It is a testament that we trust each other enough to plan for all future possibilities. Let's think about this statement. If they trust each other the way a couple should upon entering into a marriage, shouldn't the opposite be true? Shouldn't they trust each other so much that their plan for all future possibilities rests in their undying commitment to, for better or for worse, or for rich or for poor? Although it is more easily said than done, marry for love, not for money. As P.T. Barnum said, money is an excellent slave and a horrible master. Money should never be our priority in any day. It should never be our priority in any relationship. President and spokesperson of Kingdom Advisors Rob West says, either we can control money or it can control us. West's statement proves to be true in various ways. Although money can be a great source of income and can provide food on the table, it cannot be our only hope. 1 Timothy 6:10 writes that the love of money is the root of all evil. Money itself is not bad. It is the deep love of money that brings negative outcomes. When you prioritize wealth in your relationship, then greed and corruption will follow. Be the controller, not the controllee. According to a covenant marriage, there are only 3 reasons why someone can divorce: abuse, addiction, and abandonment. However, other people claim that one can simply fall out of love. People ask, if 2 were to stay together while not being in love, wouldn't they be slowly killing and damaging themselves to the point where they are utterly dying? C.S. Lewis answers this perfectly in his book, Mere Christianity, writing, ceasing to be in love need not mean ceasing to love. It is a deep unity, maintained by the will and deliberately strengthened by habit, reinforced by, in Christian marriages, the grace by which both parents ask and receive from God. Lewis continues to say that they can have this love for each other even in the moments when they do not like each other, as you love yourself when you do not like yourself. It is on this love that the engine of marriage is run. Being in love was the explosion that started it. In summary, a prenuptial agreement cannot be seen as fitting for the ideal Christian family. It only splits families into 2 sides, contradicting God's plan for his people. This lack of faith in the long-term commitment of marriage can corrupt the sense of partnership and cohesion, which are essential for a healthy relationship. When financial concerns outweigh the emotional and relational bonds, couples are more likely to view their marriage as a transaction rather than a partnership grounded in love and mutual support. By prioritizing short-term worldly desires, couples neglect the deeper, lasting bond that God has designed to embody love, commitment, and spiritual harmony. Rather than reinforcing a commitment between spouses, prenuptial agreements may unintentionally plant the seeds for divorce. By fostering stronger values of spiritual unity and teamwork, society can encourage partners to prioritize lasting bonds over material concerns, eventually strengthening the foundation of families. Thank you. I would now like to open the floor for any questions.
Okay, Leila, I'm going to start.
Oh.
This question is a lot for the junior store here today. So when you started this process, you did not say, Mrs. Barish, I would like to research prenuptial agreements and covenant marriages. That was not your initial idea. You had an idea that maybe supported where you came with this. Can you describe that process?
Yes. So I originally started with the idea, well, it was like 2 years ago. I was sitting down with my family and I remembered like thesis is coming around and I kind of need to start thinking of topics. So one thing I always remember my dad saying was, if you can't trust your partner with your money, then why are you marrying them? And so I kind of was just like, I mean, it's one thing I've heard my whole life, might as well talk about it. So so I came up to Miss Barish and I was like, I'd like to talk about bank accounts. And she was like, okay. So later on in class we were talking about it, and one of our students in class was like, actually, I think you could also kind of talk about prenuptial agreements. Well, I had no idea what that was. And so that's just kind of where it started.
Leila, I can remember you in the 8th grade
Oh, gosh.
talking about how terrified you were going to be to do this in your thesis. And you were so articulate and so well spoken. Miss Barish stole my question. So I don't really have one except to say I thought you handled a topic. You're obviously not married. You're obviously not in the middle of a prenuptial agreement. But I do think the way that you were able to speak about what a godly marriage is can only come as a testament to what your parents have shown you. And that's a lovely thing, and you did a beautiful job today.
Thank you.
So good job, Mom and Dad.
Hello.
You touched on this briefly, Leila. You talked about how covenant marriage involves premarital counseling. Did you do any research about marriages that succeed, those who have had premarital counseling versus those who haven't had premarital counseling? Did you do any research about? I know that wasn't the core topic of your thesis, but it is connected for sure. Did you do any research about that?
Honestly, I didn't do any research on that, but that is a good question, and I can look up that later.
It is a good question. And I guess I have, this is almost a silly question.
Oh,
Is
great.
covenant marriage redundant?
What does that mean?
So to me it seems like, I mean, I've officiated many wedding ceremonies, and I talk about how just the marriage itself is a covenant between two people. You're making an agreement before a whole bunch of people to commit to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Is it redundant to also say, I'm going to make a covenant about my covenant? I don't know. That's a little bit of a silly question. But
So for covenant marriages, basically it's adding more to your, like, to get out of a divorce. It makes it a lot harder because you're having to go, like, you kind of set, from what I've looked up in my research, you have to like set for yourself, like, if we were to get a divorce, we would have to go through these extra long processes to get out. So it's basically just reminding you that we set these for a reason. Yeah.
As part of the, I mean, you mentioned only 3 states that do this. As part of the covenant relationship agreement, do they have to commit to do counseling if they have problems in their marriage as well? I don't know if you know that.
I think it's different per like contract. Yeah.
Hey, great job. In your paper, and you referred to a little bit, you said that for Gen Z interviewees, the poll said 41% entered into a prenup. Was that like people who'd previously been married for Gen Z?
I from a website I found it from,
Okay.
it had said that like Gen Z interviews, which I guess is, I think that's my generation. So
That's
it's
right,
like the older people in my generation. So yeah, I guess that was just the majority of us do.
So I'm going to ask an obvious question, then I'm going to ask a follow-up that's a little more complicated. So why do you think people enter into prenups?
I think really there's so many stories of people getting in divorce from now that the doubt is just already there, and I think it's just they do it because everyone else is doing it. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, you know, I've heard it said a marriage is one sinner marrying another sinner, that obviously horrible struggles are going to come out of that reality. I'm wondering if you, in wrestling with this topic, thought about, okay, yeah, what if you have money and you're marrying someone, you think they love you because they're just altruistic or they love you just because, but it's hard to trust that when you have money, if that makes sense. And I think I've seen a lot of people create prenups, and I think it's, like you said, it's problematic for marriages because you had a great line in there like, how well is the wedding going to go if you know your family, his family pressured him to sign a prenup with you. But how do you think people are to work through those distrust issues that naturally come from marrying another sinner?
Well, I think if there's already so many trust issues at the beginning, then maybe there's something already wrong with the relationship. But for someone who's marrying with a lot more money and the other person doesn't have money, like obviously I'm not married and I haven't walked through that yet, but I think that, well, I think you're marrying for love, and money shouldn't be a part of it at all. So, I don't know. If there's already doubt in the relationship, then I just wouldn't go further, I guess.
I have a question, Leila, who I had in the 5th grade. Also was nervous about this, and you did it beautifully. I can't really talk about it because I don't want to cry. But now that you've done this research, and the Christ in His church is the model of marriage, right?
Mhm.
Like the bridegroom and the bride, Christ in the church. As you go forward in the next 5 to 10 years, when you enter into that stage of finding your person, do you feel like you'll have a conversation of having a covenant marriage with him? Or do you think that would be as awkward as having a conversation of, do you want to sign a prenup? It's
Mhm.
awkward to have that conversation of, I have a lot of money, maybe you don't. But on the other end of it, are you looking into, when you get married, to have a covenant marriage?
Yes. So I do think when I married, based off of especially I've been seeing a lot of recent marriages, especially people from our church who do go through with a covenant marriage. And I think it just gives a really good example of Christianity. And so, yeah, I probably will.
I don't want to steal someone else's question or speak before someone else has a question. Okay, I'll ask it.
Okay.
So, you really focused in a lot in your thesis on money, obviously, as being a huge source of conflict. So, just spoiler alert for anyone in here who ever gives me and my wife a wedding invitation. For 25 years, we've given a plunger as a wedding gift.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I'm just telling you, we've done this for literally dozens and dozens of people. And the reason why we do that is because we said marriage is messy, you need the right tools for the job. So, my question is, so if you think about money being a huge source of conflict potentially between a husband and a wife, just as you've looked at this topic and looked at why, kind of going back to Mr. Davis's question, why people get into prenuptial agreements, are there other kind of red flag issues that you've seen or observed just from your reading besides money that we even now should be like, oh, we need to be aware of that?
Off the top of my head, the only thing I can think of right now is money, but I know there's other topics. I just can't think of any right now.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Hey, so you said that covenant marriages only happen in Louisiana, Arkansas, and Alabama, right?
Mhm.
Do you know why that is? I'm just curious.
So this question has came up a lot recently, and I have looked it up, but the only thing I can find is those are just the only 3 who have really they wanted to decrease the amount of divorce rates, and so those are the only 3 who have done it so far, but yeah.
Interesting.
Hayden.
Do you think it's sinful to sign a prenuptial agreement before marriage?
I don't think it's necessarily sinful. My whole thing is that it just creates too much doubt and uncertainty at the beginning of the relationship, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily sinful. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. Oh, sorry.